Hat, sunglasses, Pepsi, notes, sources, thick skin. Check. You already know. Let's go. Welcome to Golden Blue Dude, everybody. This is a college football channel. So if you like college football, hit the like and subscribe button. It's that simple. Also, send gear to represent your team and be a part of my background forever. All you have to do is send it to P.O. Box 360, Liberty, South Carolina 29657. Well, I tried to skip a day where I stopped conference realignment talk, but I got the itch and I couldn't resist, guys. I couldn't resist. Well, let's see what Golden Blue Dude has come up with today. Well, today I was actually thinking in the direction of footprints, conference footprints, and what kind of footprints they could gain by expansion as far as gaining new states. And I know, that's not necessarily what conference realignment is about. What conference realignment is about, it's about getting the best brands that will make your conference the most money. Having said that, those lower conferences are looking to add their footprint and adding a flag, planting a flag in a new state and gaining a footprint in that new state. First up, we'll look at the Pac-12, look at their footprint, and see if they can gain any new footprint with future conference expansion. And this is including the losses of USC and UCLA. So the Pac-12 has Oregon and Oregon State, which is a solid footprint in the state of Oregon. They have Washington State, solid footprint in the state of Washington. They have Utah, which is a solid footprint in the state of Utah. Cal and Stanford, that's a footprint in California. Arizona and Arizona State, that's a footprint in the state of Arizona. And of course, Colorado. The Pac-12 has planted their flag in the state of Colorado. What about future additions? Well, really, they are limited unless they can grab some teams out of the Big 12, and I just don't see that happening right now. I think the teams that most likely, the teams the Pac-12 will go after, maybe Boise State. You would gain a new state of footprint in the state of Idaho. You could also go after San Diego State and Fresno State, but you already have a footprint in the state of California, but those are good brands worth pursuing. And of course, Colorado State, locking down the Colorado State rivalry, but still, you already have a team in the state of Colorado. So honestly, in future conference expansion for the Pac-12, I don't see them expanding their footprint as far as adding states very much. I mean, maybe, and this is a big stretch if they add Boise State, but I don't think the Pac-12 is going to add Boise State. They don't meet their lofty criteria as far as academics. So we could be looking at the Pac-12 staying as is as far as their footprint in certain states of the United States of America. Pac-12 is not looking good at all. Next conference, the Big 12. Yes, the Big 12 has many more states than what the Pac-12 has as far as the footprint. First up, TCU, Houston, Baylor, and Texas Tech. A strong footprint in the state of Texas. They lost to Oklahoma, but they kept Oklahoma State so far. So they still have a footprint in the state of Oklahoma. They have Iowa State. That's a footprint in the state of Iowa. West Virginia, a solid footprint in the state of West Virginia. Kansas and Kansas State, so they have the state of Kansas wrapped up. They have BYU, so they added the state of Utah. UCF, that's a far stretch, but hey, the state of Florida, the Big 12 now has a claim. And finally, Cincinnati, so now the Big 12 has a claim for a footprint in the state of Ohio. What about future additions? Well, of course, this all depends on the grant of rights in the ACC, but right now people are talking about the four corners, and that's Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado. So if the Big 12 adds Arizona and Arizona State, you're adding the state of Arizona. Of course, Utah, you're adding the state of Utah. And Colorado, you're adding the state of Colorado. However, maybe the Big 12 is waiting to see if those grant of rights do get broken and they look towards teams in the ACC. But before we get to the ACC, I think no matter what, the Big 12 could end up adding Memphis, and that would be adding a solid footprint in the state of Tennessee and giving a nice bridge between the core of the Big 12 and the eastern teams of the Big 12. But out of the ACC, the teams most likely to get picked up by the Big 12, if the grant of rights get figured out, I think Louisville could get picked up by the Big 12, and that's a good footprint in the state of Kentucky, and it connects to Ohio, which is where Cincinnati is, and of course the state of West Virginia. But on top of that, they could go out and get Pitt. That's a great footprint in the state of Pennsylvania. Great rivalry, the backyard brawl. And you're connecting those eastern teams even more. So Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, and Kentucky right there all together. But on top of that, they could also get Virginia Tech, which is laying a claim in the state of Virginia, and you're still connecting states. Adding another team out of the state of Florida is the Canes of Miami, and I do think the Big 12 has a great opportunity to get Miami. And finally, Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech would be a great footprint in the state of Georgia for the Big 12, and who knows knows? Maybe they could add an NC State out of the state of North Carolina, and you'd have Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida. All of those states connected, and there's a possibility the Big 12 could also go after Syracuse, and that would be gaining a footprint in the state of New York. So the Big 12 would have a footprint up and down the east side of the United States. It wouldn't be 100% connected to the core of the Big 12, but if you got Memphis, at least there would be a bridge there. So basically, you'd have a west side of the Big 12 and an east side of the Big 12. That would be flat out awesome. That's actually what I'm hoping for. I know I've preached West Virginia to the ACC over and over and over, but that's basically because I want to play my rivals year in and year out. If the Big 12 goes out and gets them, then I'm okay with that as well. What about the ACC? Well, the ACC has Clemson, that's the state of South Carolina, Syracuse, the state of New York, Florida State, and Miami, that's the state of Florida. Louisville covers the state of Kentucky, and there's NC State, Wake Forest, North Carolina, and Duke, all in the state of North Carolina. Boston College, so they have the state of Massachusetts. Georgia Tech gives them Georgia, Pitt gives them Pennsylvania, and Virginia Tech gives them the state of Virginia. Future ads, well, it depends on if they can redo that TV deal, but if they can draw in some big money and draw in some names, the first team would be Notre Dame. I'm not counting Notre Dame now because they're not a full-time football member. But grab Notre Dame as a full-time football member. That locks down the state of Indiana as far as giving you a footprint. Go out and get West Virginia, that's a footprint in the state of West Virginia. Oklahoma State would also be a great addition, and that gives you a footprint in the state of Oklahoma. Going out and get Memphis. The ACC does not have a footprint in the state of Tennessee, so getting Memphis would give you that. And of course, getting any of these teams out of the state of Texas, I'm talking about Texas Tech, TCU, Baylor, and Houston, that would give you a footprint in the state of Texas. Maybe not a great one, but hey, any footprint in the state of Texas is pretty good. And you could also go after Cincinnati, which would fit right in with the ACC and give you an additional footprint in the state of Ohio. So that's how the ACC could stretch their footprint and grab some teams in some new states. And finally, the big dogs, the Big 10 and the SEC. And if you didn't think having as many states possible as far as having a footprint in, then you really need to pay attention to the big dogs. Because not only do they have great brands, but they cover a lot of states. First up, the Big 10. They have Michigan State covering the state of Michigan. Ohio State grabs the state of Ohio. Penn State gives them the state of Pennsylvania. Maryland, the state of Maryland. Indiana and Purdue locks down the state of Indiana. Illinois and Northwestern gives them the state of Illinois. Minnesota gives you Minnesota. Wisconsin gives you Wisconsin. Nebraska, and adding USC and UCLA gives you a firm footprint in the state of California. So who should they go after next? I think they should go after and will go after Washington and Oregon. That gives you a great footprint in the state of Washington and in the state of Oregon. And that gives you the entire western seaboard. Also on top of that, you could also grab North Carolina and Duke. That would give you the footprint in the state of North Carolina. Grabbing Georgia Tech would give you a footprint in the state of Georgia. And grabbing Virginia or Virginia Tech or both would grab you a footprint in the state of Virginia. So locking down the western seaboard and adding more teams to the southern side of the east side of the Big 10 is a great idea for the Big 10, and I think that's exactly what they do. I don't know which teams in which order, but the Big 10 is not done yet. Not by a long shot. And finally, the SEC. What states do they have a footprint in? Well, they have Georgia, which gives them a footprint in the state of Georgia. Tennessee and Vanderbilt, which gives them Tennessee. Kentucky gives them Kentucky. South Carolina gives them South Carolina. Missouri. Florida. LSU, Louisiana. Ole Miss and Mississippi State gives them the state of Mississippi. Alabama and Auburn gives them the state of Alabama. Arkansas gives them Arkansas. Texas A&M and adding Texas gives them the state of Texas. And of course, they went out and got Oklahoma. So now they have a footprint in the state of Oklahoma. Future additions. Well, I've heard from sources that they're very interested in Oklahoma State. That doesn't give them an extra footprint, but it locks down Bedlam, and Oklahoma State is a good brand. But I've also heard about West Virginia. And West Virginia is another state that the SEC doesn't have a footprint in. And it would make a lot of sense. They also want to go after Clemson. They already have a footprint in the state of South Carolina, but they don't have the best brand in the state of South Carolina. That's Clemson, and the SEC will get Clemson. Florida State. I know Florida doesn't like it, and the SEC already has a footprint in the state of Florida. The SEC will get Florida State. On top of that, the SEC could get North Carolina. That gives you a nice footprint in the state of North Carolina. And they could also get Virginia. That also gives you a nice footprint in the state of Virginia. So if all this happens for the SEC, they're actually gaining 3 extra states. West Virginia, North Carolina, and Virginia. I think that rounds out the SEC nicely. Y'all let me know in the comments section. What states do you think each Power 5 conference adds either now or in the future whenever conference realignment happens again? That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.